Okay, so if you don't know me, my name is DE Cosmic, and I'm a speedrunner for the Devil May Cry series. I'm making a statement about um, the recent drama from the Reddit May Cry Discord, or the Devil May Cry Reddit server Discord. Um, and I'm just gonna be like, I'm gonna cut out, the beef and the intro and everything, because if you're watching this video, you should know what's going on. I am going to start off with a disclaimer that I don't really bear any ill will towards the people that were called out in this drama. Um, and I'm going to do my best to provide more of a journalistic standpoint, or more of an unbiased standpoint, and kind of look at the logistics of this whole situation and kind of what went wrong. Maybe try to apply some concepts um, to help people understand this situation a little bit better. Basically, I'm going to start off first with my experiences regarding administration and modding, and being on mod teams. um, and if you want to count, I've been a manager in retail for like 4 years or something. So that's cool, I guess. Um, but I ran a tech and website for the better part of a year, and I was involved on the mod team for that site for a couple of years. And I eventually ended up taking it over and trying to make it profitable, and I ended up closing it because it wasn't profitable because the previous owner um, had not kept up with the maintenance on the site, which is a very interesting parallel to the current situation with Ego, or Oncoming Storm. I'll refer to him as Ego throughout the video because that's a little bit easier to keep repeating rather than Oncoming Storm, and I don't want to shorten it to, OCS, um, because that's just Orange County something. I'll figure out a different acronym for it. So I helped out on that site for a couple of years before closing it down, um, due to it mostly not being profitable and it kind of dying off. Um, we thought that the hype for a new game would reignite it, but that wasn't the case. And my experiences with modding, in addition to that, are that I'm a current speedrun.com moderator for 3 Devil May Cry games. Yeah, three. There's four fingers. So 3 Devil May Cry games. So Devil May Cry 1, Devil May Cry 2, and Devil May Cry 5. And I also mod the series. I'm also a series mod for Devil May Cry. Um, I'm basically the head mod for Devil May Cry 5 as well. I've been making a lot of decisions regarding the big changes in that game as far as what's allowed, what kind of categories we're going to have, what kind of runs are getting verified, etc., etc. Um, as well as providing resources, which I think should be a part of a mod team for any given game. It's providing resources to new runners and sharing information that I have there. Um, so I was gonna start off with the facts of this situation, but it's all pretty much on Twitter. I'll just link it in the description so everybody can have a read through it. Um, what I do want to say first is that Ego keeping to himself access to a not safe for work channel when the Discord was a Discord partner, that should have basically been the end of this discussion. Because to me, that's a huge, breach of trust, and it's a huge rule break. And at that point, it's clear that he was not only going behind the backs of the other moderators for this Discord, but he's also deliberately disobeying rules that Discord themselves have set forth. And at that point, like if I were Discord, I would have just yanked the partnership away, if I'm being frank. And so at that point, to me, the discussion should just be over. Um, and I have personal issues with the idea of a server owner for something as big as the Reddit May Cry server or Devil May Cry server that is just totally inactive. Um, and so I'll go over my experiences with the RDMC mods and some of the RDMC staff. I've only been involved in the Reddit May Cry Discord for about, I want to say 9 months, maybe 9, 10 months. And when I first met that team of people, I actually thought that Mills was the one that owned the server, because Mills was pretty much my first contact with a mod from that server. And he brought me and Loner Hero on to, me to speedrun, or me to commentate Devil May Cry 2 while Loner Hero ran it. And he was really welcoming. He had a great attitude. He pretty much just let us do our thing, um, and was really, he seemed very open-minded to the idea of, speedrunning the game and getting people, like, involved in this kind of thing when he got to know us more and he saw kind of the potential behind that sort of content. And that to me was really cool. And I really thought that he was kind of, the owner, the head honcho there. And he was basically, the owner in actions alone, unfortunately. Um, there came a point where I said to Mills, "Why are you not Discord server owner?" And he said to me, "Well, ego," and he referred to him as Oncoming Storm because he figured I didn't know the history. I learned later on that Oncoming Storm's name was Ego later. Um, and he said to me, Oncoming Storm doesn't want to give it up. He didn't mention that there was, free nitro involved. I was told this later by somebody else. Um, And again, I'll actually just start naming people because I just want all of this information to not be vague. It was Liam that told me that um, Ego did not want to give up the ownership because of the free nitro. And I really thought that he was just like pulling my chain or just being hyperbolic. I didn't think that that was an actual reason, but apparently it is, which is stupid to me. I haven't actually had a lot of interactions with Ego myself. I think I only talked to him briefly during the hour or 2 hour sections of the MVC3 time slot for the Reddit May Cry third charity stream. Um, and I really can't extrapolate much about his personality in terms or his effectiveness as a moderator from that kind of interaction, and I'm not going to pretend like I can. Um, I will say that he seemed very, and always has seemed very disconnected from that server and from that community. And as somebody that takes so much care in building a community like I do, it's pretty insulting to me that somebody like that would continue to hold on to an ownership of a server rather than give it to somebody um, who is a lot more involved than them and is clearly more deserving. But we'll get into this idea of concession to the opposition in a second. Um, because you know, so I want to also talk about Mick for a little bit, and just kind of generally like Mick, Panny, and Liam, and Pro Eaton. And I don't want to turn this into a circle jerk video, so I'll pretty much be brief and say that all those guys are really hardworking and they are always on that server, and they're always in there, making sure that everybody's behaving themselves and they're doing a lot of good work there, in addition to the subreddit for those that are involved with it. Now I'll talk about KJ a little bit, and then I'll elaborate on KJ a little bit more. I've also not really had a lot of experiences with KJ Loop. Um, I can't say I hate him. I certainly am not the fondest of him because there was a point where um, in the first month when Devil May Cry 5 came out, um, where Mills ended up impromptu scheduling me for a stream on the Reddit May Cry stream to speedrun Devil May Cry 5. And he told KJ, hey, KJ, hook Cosmic up with the stream key and, do whatever you got to do. And KJ said, okay, in the live stream Discord. So the day came for me to stream, and about 15, 20 minutes after I was supposed to start my stream, I messaged KJ and I said, I DM'd him and I said, hey, am I still going to be streaming? What's going on? And he said, Mills kind of dropped this on me pretty, unexpectedly, and I didn't really expect to have streams on the weekend. And I said, okay, that's fair. I said, I really don't want to inconvenience you. I understand people have lives. And I said, so what day is good for you? I have off this day or this day. And we ended up going with Tuesday. And he said, Tuesday would be great. And we set a time slot. And I said, cool, that's awesome. And he ended up ghosting me on that stream, which I wouldn't have been bothered at all if he had just straight up said to me, dude, I can't do this. I am so sorry, you know. Or he could have delegated it to somebody else. But the fact that he ghosted me was just like pretty disrespectful and pretty unprofessional. Um, and again, it's like that one incident might not seem like a big deal, but to me that's a big deal because that Reddit May Cry stream gets a really good amount of viewers and could be partnered by now if they had kept up with it, which nobody really did. And for somebody like me, that is a great opportunity to get my content out there. And I was essentially denied this opportunity because of neglect and lack of communication. So I kind of just took it in stride and said, okay, whatever. My stream wasn't supposed to happen anyway. I'll just move on from it. And that's kind of why I didn't really ever bring it up to anybody but Mills in passing. And he said, why didn't you tell me? And I said, it's not really a big deal. I went and streamed on my own channel. So, that's not to say that, I think that KJ is the only unprofessional person. Because it's been pretty clear if you watch Twitter that the people that are in that Discord server, they have, what's it called? There's a lot of hyperbole that gets thrown around by some of these people that run the Devil May Cry Discord and the Devil May Cry subreddit. I mean, honestly, like, I could sit here and say how great I think Mills is, but during the whole Inertia Gate thing, when a lot of the high-level players were on Twitter talking about their grievances with the game, Mills was especially hyperbolic and, tweeted out multiple times about, oh, modders saved the game, this game's trash, and like on his stream, he would be saying, like, if somebody asked him, oh, do you like DMC5? He'd be like, nah, worst game I ever played, and then he's like, oh, okay, but modded it's cool, which somebody that's me, like, I'm going to understand what he's actually, the joke that he's making there, but not everybody else is going to. And the hyperbole that existed on his Twitter, not everybody is going to understand. But that's kind of the disconnect between a personalized Twitter and professional behavior, is that, Mills came out and made a statement like, I tweet these things out that are only to represent me. And he didn't seek to drag, this image of a subreddit mod or a Discord mod onto that Twitter, which was respectable. He basically just said, this is me, this is who I am. If you don't like it, this is my personal Twitter. I'm not going to hold it to the standards of professionalism, which you actually can kind of see echoed in esports journalists like Thorin, who has said, my personal Twitter is not held to the same standards as my professional journalism work. He's been particularly vocal about his dislikes of certain organizers for League of Legends and for certain teams, but he reports about them all the same with the same level of objectivity. And Mills continued to run a lot of the events and the Discord server with professionalism. So I get that the disconnect there, or the compartmentalization of those two kinds of faces of somebody, or I mean, I guess you could call them faces, or I guess you could call them facets of somebody's image are a little bit harder to separate, but it's necessary when it's clear that the person is making that distinction. somebody that didn't necessarily make the decision and sort of brought this whole thing, willingly into their personal space was Radio Inactivity, who said, because she actually screen capped somebody's posts on the subreddit and said something to the effect of DMC4 fans are fucking crazy. And then she proceeded to get into a lot of arguments with people, and somebody brought up, the fact that she was a subreddit mod. And instead of saying, these tweets are my own, this is who I am, if you don't agree with it, then whatever, it's not about me being a mod, that would have been the appropriate thing to say. But instead she went with, well, pay me then, and I'll act professional, or I'll act acceptable. And this really comes down to a matter of PR. Like, sure, that's how you really feel, but that's not really the way to go about it, and that's certainly not going to make people want to see your side. And so these sort of so she basically took what somebody had said to her and she dragged that into that personal space, whereas Mills kind of sought to separate those two parts of himself, and just keep one where one was and one where the other was. Of course, he would, tweet out stuff about the events and everything on his Twitter. He would use it for promotion, but who doesn't do that? Thorin also promotes his work on his Twitter as well. So I would say overall my experiences with the RDMC mods and staff are mostly positive. The thing about Ego is that I don't know Ego. And again, I'm not going to extrapolate anything about his personality from my very little interactions with him, but to me, if you're going to be a server owner for something like this, if you're going to try and claim that you run it, then you need to actually run it. And I think that's kind of what this whole thing is about. It's not necessarily about power, it's about autonomy. And those things aren't necessarily synonyms for each other, although they kind of go hand in hand. Mick said, they wanted the ability, he didn't say power, he just said the ability to make decisions quicker. And that was agreed upon. What wasn't agreed upon was, I believe, the transfer of ownership. KJ later says that they contacted Discord about it to transfer ownership and all that stuff, because apparently that takes time, but that was never mentioned. I can link that tweet in the description below that Mills made regarding that statement. And to me, from a lot of the screenshots that I've read, there's this idea that concession to the opposition, or the people that are on the opposing side of an argument, or are just on the opposite side of an argument, that concession to the opposition is this concept that leaves you too vulnerable to gain any sort of footing or to have any sort of compromise, when compromise is built entirely around this concept. Most people's idea of compromise is, I get what I want and none of that compromises, and what you get doesn't compromise what I want, which is not exactly how compromise works at all. And pulling, so let's say Ego were to pull back his power, and transfer ownership. That's not really a slight on him at all. He literally has nothing to lose from any of this other than his free nitro. So why he would hold on to this, I'm really not sure. Because at the end of the day, it's about autonomy, and it's about a gelled team working together in conjunction rather than this splintered team. And when you work in management, you work in administration, you learn that how functional and how gelled your team is starts from the top of the chain. So if you're never there, or if you're only there when you need it, only there when you're, quote unquote needed, these things start to just come apart, and they start to compartmentalize, and they start to click up, if you want to call it that. I don't think it was necessarily a click so much as it was these were the people that were doing the job. And there's a nice proverb, I guess, in the workforce that goes, 20% of the people do 80% of the work. And that definitely seems to be the case here. The number one complaint that I hear in my work from other managers is that some store managers sit in the office all the time, and they only come out, quote unquote, when they're needed. They're still technically the store manager, but they're not really the one running things, and so they don't inspire, morale or anything like that. And people often wonder why they're there. And that's pretty much I would say, almost a direct parallel to what has happened here. Um, but pulling back or sharing, pulling back your power and sharing in the autonomy that you've, created for others, there's no shame in that whatsoever. And I don't think that ego realizes that. If this really is a matter of just wanting the free night show or wanting whatever, then I logically can't make an argument in his favor. I really can't. Um, do I think that it sucks for him and like him and KJ that it had to come to this? Absolutely. I don't think that, they should have been put in this position because it really sucks to deal with. Um, because PR sucks. And but there's sometimes where you kind of have to force these ultimatums in order to get change. And I understand, and I'm not going to reveal my sources on this. Um, I understand that KJ was hurt, and I totally get that. But KJ has to understand his role in all of this. And it's this disconnect between the Discord and the subreddit. And it's the idea that just being dismissive is going to quell this sort of thing. You you have a body of people that have every figurehead of DMC behind them. How exactly did you think this was gonna go? It's not gonna go in your favor. Whose ego and whose KJ loop? That's kind of the idea that's going around. Like, people still don't know who Oncoming Storm or Ego really are. Even in the server to this day, there's people going, who's Ego or who's Oncoming Storm, because they're never there. Like, he's just never there. But concession to the opposition is this idea in rhetoric and in persuasion that you can totally be okay, with accepting what somebody is telling you and then seeking, a better solution where you both benefit rather than just kind of giving them some of the things that they want, but not giving them the big thing that they want, which was transfer of ownership, which was the big thing. And that's kind of where this whole issue stems from. Um, Now, and I'll give an example here of like somebody that I felt really handled autonomy very well recently that I dealt with was Maxi Lopes. Because Maxi and I have been moderators for DMC Vive for pretty much since day one. And Maxi thought that he was going to run the game and be super involved with it. That didn't end up being the case, so eventually, even though I was mentioning him in a lot of posts, in a lot of discussions in the moderator chat, he was pulling back and just letting me do things more and more. And I talked to him, a bunch, and I said, hey, are you going to run DMC5? Hey, what do you think of this? And I've talked to Maxi a fair share in his stream. And he was always pretty comfortable with the decisions that I made. And recently said to me, hey, dude, I'm going to give you Supermod when I get a chance to. And just kind of, watch from the background. Because Maxi has proven himself time and time again that he's a really good moderator for games on speedrun.com. But what he's saying to me is, I trust you to do this, and I'm going to give you the autonomy to make the decisions quicker that you're already making without having to hope that, I'm here. This is, this is just me talking from a perspective. These aren't his exact words, you know. Um, and that was really cool of him. And he hasn't promoted me yet, but he'll get the time to. I know he will. He's a busy guy, but again, that's kind of the understanding that we have is that he's a busy guy and he doesn't really have time for every game in the world. So what did he do? He pulled back on his power and granted me like more autonomy, even though I barely have any more power. It's just kind of like a title super mod. All I can do is just add mods on my own now. That's the only difference. But it's that autonomy that matters. And you know, since he let me make a lot of those decisions on the game, and he let me bring in people that I trusted to run the game or to moderate the game that were also running the game. The team is pretty congealed. We have people that are kind of there in the background that give their opinion on things because they're good at what they do, and they've proven that time and time again, such as Zero Ducks, Mecharesium, and PVTCB. Um, Whereas like the main mods for the game are myself, Fruit MacGuffin, and Tech Theist. Mecharesium does a lot of verifying of runs, but that's kind of just like what he said. This is my purpose here, is I'm just verifying runs. Um, so nothing ever really needed to come to a head except for when I explained to Mecha my personal issues with him. But that's kind of like what I think went wrong, and that's what I'm going to get to now is the fact that Mecha Mike, Mick, and Mills brought this up on Mills's podcast, and KJ has this idea in his that he gave out. He made in his statement that Ego didn't know any of this until a couple of days ago, and it was because of this podcast. Now, what KJ and Ego have to understand is that this was a long time coming, and I think that Mick and Mecha Mike and Penny and Liam should have come to them sooner about this. I don't think it should have built up to this point. Maybe this could have been avoided, but I don't know. I think it was too long coming, and too much had been built up internally, um, on not only in the private space but also in the public space, um, for this to not come out with this outcome, for lack of a better phrase. So what they have to understand is that things that are talked about on Run of the Mills are totally at the discretion of the people that are on that podcast. If you don't want to talk about it, Mills will not talk about it, which is why I went on there and talked about a lot of the drama that I talked about with the speedrunning community and all that fun stuff. Because I said to Mills, Mills said to me, are we okay to talk about this? And I said, absolutely. I'm on here to be as candid as possible, and I'm on here to be as honest as possible. And I said, it's me being vague about this, or like let's say Mills brought this up on the on the podcast with Mike and Mick, and he said, oh, so what do you think about the Discord subreddit server? And they just said, oh, we don't really want to talk about that. That raises more heads to me, than them just being straight up about it. Because if you're straight up about something, there's a lot more time for people to digest what you're saying and come to better conclusions. Again, do I think that they should have come to the rest of the mod team a little bit quicker with this sort of statement? Yeah, absolutely. I can't reasonably argue against that idea. But I hope that there's no misconception as to why it was brought up. It was brought up because they wanted to bring it up, and they wanted to discuss it, and they wanted to put it out there, and they wanted to get it off their chest. And I think that Ego needs to start self-reflecting a lot on, is this the kind of leader that I've been, or is this the kind of server owner that I've been, that people don't feel that they can communicate to me without me being dismissive, maybe, or without maybe anything getting done, or as Mick said to me, they kind of had to hope that Ego was online just to get things done. So you should not only reflect on, okay, these people could have come forward sooner, but you also have to reflect on, why did they not feel that they could come to me sooner? Why did I lose their trust? Instead, it was just, oh yeah, I lost their trust, and that was it. And that's kind of like the house of cards that has been built here. Now, KJ personally, to me, feels a lot like a yes man for Ego. And in one of the screenshots, he basically says, oh, if they try a coup, then, he posts an emote of Ebony and Ivory, which is, I guess, maybe a joke, but jokes don't exist in a vacuum. And I hope that KJ understands that. Again, I don't bear any ill will towards KJ. Sure, he ghosted me, but and that kind of soured me on him a little, but I don't think he's a bad person. I think that he's just made a couple of pretty dumb mistakes in a couple of different situations. This one included. Why he's felt the need to take on the brunt of this and sort of play yes man or play PR for ego, I don't know. He said in the server earlier, "Oh, he's in class and I'm on summer." All right, cool. This is still his problem. You don't have to solve this by yourself. Um, so that to me is weird. Um, that to me is super weird. And is it a matter of wanting power? Is it a matter of wanting to keep the nostalgia of that server? Maybe. In fact, I'm pretty sure it is. But the relinquishment of power, like in the Maxi Lobes example that I gave, doesn't really say much about you as a person. In fact, it really says more to, it speaks more to your understanding of what is healthy for your community and how the people around you have built up this community to maybe be bigger than what you expected. And maybe it's time for you to accept that they need to take the reins on this and you need to let them, because so far they've proven that they can do it, and you just need to give them more autonomy in doing it. Um, so as far as the aftermath is concerned, um, I hope that nobody misconstrues this video as like a personal attack on anybody. I'm just listing my own um, like outside perspective on the situation, because I really am just outside looking in on this whole thing. Um, I was asked for my opinions before by Liam regarding this, and I fundamentally can argue that what they did I felt was right, because there was, at this point that it had built up to, there was no other way this could have gone. Um, and like at least this would have not been enacted in such a like forceful and powerful way. Um, because a slow burn of change might still be, change, and it might still be good, but the statement really had to be made that they weren't going to just roll over and take shit. And to me, that says a lot about how proactive all the mods were, because they weren't just going to let their in slow burn this whole thing. They weren't going to just sit back and say, all right, fine, we'll talk about this and we'll, do this, blah, 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 and we'll jump through all these hoops and, Discord level and subreddit level bureaucracy, blah, 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 blah. And in the aftermath of all this, do I think that the two servers should merge? No. I think that by pulling back into the main server, the statement is basically just, all right, we made our big split, but we're back now. We're all buddies. I I think that they both have to remain separate, the new one and the old one, um, until further action is taken by KJ and or Ego. I really don't think that if the guys that enacted this change, if they want this to stick and they don't want this to just be something that blows over, I think that they need to just accept that they have to, sit where they are and just wait for another statement and wait for them to maybe go on Mills's podcast and hash this whole thing out. But yeah, that's my statement. That'll really be it. So thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions, you can reply to the Twitter thread that I'm going to post this in, or if you're in the other Discord server for our DMC, you can reply to me there, or you can DM me on Discord. Yeah, have a great night, everybody.